The blood-red sunset painted the horizon like spilled wine as Hattie Daniels stood on the porch of what remained of her father's ranch house, clutching the foreclosure notice with white knuckles. 3 days. That's all the time she had left in the only home she'd ever known. The drought of 1873 had been merciless across Wyoming territory, turning once fertile grazing land into a wasteland of cracked earth and withered hopes. What are we going to do? Her younger sister Margaret asked, blue eyes wide with the innocent fear of a 15-year-old who'd already seen too much heartache. I don't know, Maggie, Hattie replied, trying to sound stronger than her 22 years and exhausted spirit allowed. But we'll figure it out. We always do. The funeral had been small, just 6 weeks ago. Their father, once the proud owner of the Circle D, had succumbed to pneumonia after a brutal winter. Their mother had been gone for years, leaving Hattie with the burden of raising Maggie and trying to maintain what little dignity remained in their lives. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention to the dusty road. A rider appeared, silhouetted against the dying light. Tall and broad-shouldered, he sat easy in the saddle, a stranger's shape against the familiar landscape. Stay inside, Hattie told Maggie, reaching for the shotgun their father had taught her to use when she was just 12. The rider approached slowly, deliberately, his hands visible on the reins of a magnificent chestnut gelding. As he came closer, Hattie could make out his features. Sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of a summer storm, and a strong jaw darkened by several days' growth of beard. His clothes were trail-worn but of good quality, marking him as neither desperately poor nor ostentatiously wealthy. "Evening, madam," he called, touching the brim of his hat. "Name's Cole Adams. I'm looking for the Circle D Ranch." Hattie kept the shotgun visible but lowered it slightly. "You found it. What's your business here?" He dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd spent his life on horseback. "I heard Joshua Daniels might be hiring. I've worked cattle since I was tall enough to see over a saddle horn." The words were like salt in an open wound. "My father passed away last month, Mr. Adams, and as you can see, we're not exactly in a position to be hiring." She gestured toward the foreclosure notice still clutched in her left hand. Something flickered in those storm-gray eyes. Not pity. Hattie would have slammed the door on pity, but a quiet understanding that caught her off guard. "I'm sorry for your loss, madam," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I knew your father, though it was many years ago. He was a good man." Hattie frowned. "You knew my father? How?" Cole shifted his weight, dust rising from his boots. "We drove cattle together from Texas to Dodge City back in '65. I was just a boy then, 17 and green as spring grass, but your father took me under his wing, taught me plenty." Maggie had appeared in the doorway behind Hattie, curiosity overcoming caution. "Did you really know Pa?" A smile softened his weathered face. "I surely did, miss. He could rope a calf at 50 paces and cook the best beans this side of the Mississippi." Hattie felt the first crack in her suspicion. The beans part was true enough. Their father had been oddly proud of his bean recipe, a mysterious combination of molasses, coffee, and spices he'd refused to write down. "I'd offer you supper, Mr. Adams, but we're running low on just about everything except trouble," Hattie said, struggling to maintain the courtesy her mother had instilled in her. "I've got provisions in my saddlebag," he replied. "More than enough to share. And I'm handy with a skillet if you'll allow me." The offer of food was tempting, but pride kept Hattie's spine straight. "We don't take charity, Mr. Adams." "It's not charity among friends of Joshua Daniels," he countered. "Just common decency." Before Hattie could respond, Maggie piped up, "Please, Hattie, I'm so tired of beans." The hope in her sister's voice broke through Hattie's resistance. With a slight nod, she stepped aside. You can hitch your horse at the post, but that shotgun stays right where I can reach it, understood?" His smile was quick and genuine. "Yes, madam." While Cole tended to his horse, Hattie whispered to Maggie, "Don't get attached. He'll be gone by morning, just like all the other drifters." The meal he prepared was simple but flavorful: salt pork, potatoes, and fresh biscuits that made the small kitchen smell like better days. As they ate, Cole shared stories about their father that even Hattie hadn't heard, painting a picture of a younger, more adventurous man than the one she'd known. "So what brings you to these parts now, Mr. Adams?" Hattie asked as they finished eating. Cole wiped his mouth with a bandana. "Looking for work, mainly. Heard Wyoming was opening up, cattle operations expanding." "Not around here," Hattie said bitterly. "The droughts hit everyone hard. Most of the small ranchers are selling out to Thornton Price." "Price?" Cole's brow furrowed. "The name's familiar." "He owns the Rocking P," Maggie explained. "Biggest spread in the territory now. He's been buying up all the land he can get his hands on." "Including ours," Hattie added, gesturing to the foreclosure notice she'd placed on the table. "We've got a bank loan that's due and no means to pay it. Price offered to buy the land for a fraction of what it's worth, but even that's looking better than nothing right now." Cole studied the paper for a long moment. "How much do you need?" $250, Hattie answered, the sum feeling as impossible as $1 million. "Plus we'd need operating capital to get back on our feet. The herd's down to less than 50 head after the winter, and half of those are too sickly to fetch a decent price." "What if I made you a proposition, Miss Daniels?" Cole asked, his voice careful but determined. Hattie's eyes narrowed. "What kind of proposition? I've got some money saved." "Not a fortune, but enough. I could loan you what you need for the bank. In return, I'd work the ranch with you, take a share of the profits once we get things running again." The offer hung in the air between them. Hattie's mind raced through the possibilities, the dangers, the desperate hope it inspired. "Why would you do that for strangers?" she finally asked. "Like I said, your father was good to me when I needed it most. And—" he hesitated, looking out the window at the darkening sky. "I've been drifting a long time, maybe too long." Maggie looked at Hattie with pleading eyes. "We could keep the ranch, Hat." Hattie stood up, clearing the plates with hands that weren't quite steady. "I need to think about it, Mr. Adams. It's not a decision to make lightly." "Of course," he agreed. "And it's Cole, if you don't mind." That night, after Cole had bedded down in the barn and Maggie was asleep, Hattie sat on the porch steps, staring at the stars scattered like diamond dust across the Wyoming sky. The land stretched before her, a patchwork of shadow and starlight, land that had been Daniel's land for 15 years, land she'd thought would always be theirs. The sound of boots on wood alerted her to Cole's presence before he spoke. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance. "Too many thoughts," she admitted. He nodded, leaning against the porch railing. "It's a fair night, good thinking weather." They stood in companionable silence for a while, until Hattie finally gave voice to the fear that had been nagging at her since dinner. "What if we fail? What if I take your money and we still lose everything?" Cole considered this. "Life's full of what-ifs, Miss Daniels. Can't let them stop you from trying." "Hattie," she corrected softly, "if we're going to be business partners, you might as well use my name." The next morning, Hattie rode into town with Cole to speak with Mr. Pearson at the bank. Independence, Wyoming wasn't much a single street of false-fronted buildings, a church with a crooked steeple, and the ever-present dust that seemed to coat everything in a fine, pale powder. The banker's eyebrows rose nearly to his receding hairline when Cole counted out the money on his desk. "Well, Miss Daniels, this is unexpected," Pearson said, his tone suggesting he wasn't entirely pleased. You understand this only covers the immediate note. There will be additional payments due. We understand, Mr. Pearson, Hattie replied, her back ramrod straight. The Circle D will meet its obligations. Outside the bank, Cole tipped his hat to a group of women who were watching with undisguised curiosity. Word travels fast in small towns, he observed. Like wildfire, Hattie agreed, untying her horse from the hitching post. By supper time, everyone within 20 miles will know that Hattie Daniels has taken on a partner. Does that bother you? She considered the question. People will talk regardless of what I do. Better they talk about me trying to save my father's legacy than about me losing it. They stopped at the general store, where Hattie used some of the remaining money to purchase supplies they desperately needed: seeds for the kitchen garden, ammunition, tools and staples like flour and coffee. Mr. Winters, the storekeeper, wrapped up their purchases with a sympathetic smile. Sorry to hear about your troubles, Hattie. Your daddy was well respected in these parts. Thank you, Mr. Winters, she replied, but we're getting back on our feet. As they loaded the supplies onto their horses, a large man emerged from the saloon across the street, flanked by two rough-looking cowboys. His expensive clothes and gold watch chain marked him as a man of means, but there was something cold in his eyes that made Hattie's stomach clench. Thornton Price, she whispered to Cole. Speak of the devil. Price spotted them and crossed the street, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Miss Daniels, what a pleasant surprise. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me. Just busy, Mr. Price, Hattie replied, her tone neutral. Price's gaze shifted to Cole, assessing him with the calculating look of a man accustomed to measuring the worth of everything and everyone. I don't believe we've met. Cole Adams, Cole said simply, offering no further information. Mr. Adams is my new partner, Hattie added, taking a small, defiant pleasure in the surprise that flickered across Price's face. Partner? How interesting. Price stroked his neatly trimmed beard. I wasn't aware the Circle D had anything left worth partnering for. Cole's voice remained even, but Hattie noticed his posture shift subtly, ready in a way that spoke of experience with trouble. I find value in places others might overlook, Mr. Price. Price laughed, a sound without humor. Well, I admire optimism, misguided though it might be. My offer still stands, Miss Daniels. When you're ready to be practical, you know where to find me. After Price and his men had moved on, Cole secured the last of their supplies. Charming fellow. He's been trying to buy our water rights for years, Hattie explained as they mounted up. The Circle D sits on the headwaters of Cottonwood Creek. In a drought like this, that water's worth more than gold. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. As they crested the final rise that overlooked the Circle D, Hattie pulled her horse to a stop, taking in the view. The ranch buildings looked small and vulnerable from this distance, the barn roof sagging, the corral missing several rails. But it was home, and for the first time in weeks, there was a chance it might remain so. It's good land, Cole said, following her gaze. With work and some luck, it could be a fine ranch again. That's a lot of if, Cole Adams, he smiled, the wind ruffling his dark hair. I've bet on worse odds. Over the next days, Cole proved himself to be as good as his word. He rose before dawn and worked until dusk, mending fences, repairing the barn, and helping Hattie assess the remaining cattle. His knowledge of ranching was evident in everything he did, from the way he handled the stock to his suggestions for improving the irrigation system to make better use of their precious water. Maggie blossomed in his presence, following him around the ranch and soaking up his stories like a sponge. Hattie found herself warming to him despite her initial reservations, impressed by his work ethic and the easy way he fit into their lives. as if he'd always belonged there. A week after Cole's arrival, they were working together in the corral, separating the healthier cattle for better grazing, when a rider approached from the direction of town. Hattie recognized Ben Taylor, the son of a neighboring rancher and one of the few friends they had left in the area. "Hattie," Ben called, dismounting quickly, "you need to get into town right away. There's trouble brewing." "What kind of trouble?" Hattie asked, wiping sweat from her brow. Ben cast a suspicious glance at Cole before answering. "Price is making moves at the land office. Word is he's filing a claim that overlaps your northern boundary, the part with the spring." "He can't do that," Hattie protested. "Those boundaries were established when my father homesteaded this land." "He's saying there was an error in the original survey," Ben explained. "He's got some fancy lawyer from Cheyenne backing him up." Cole stepped forward, extending a hand to Ben. "Cole Adams, I'm working with Miss Daniels now." Ben shook his hand warily. "Ben Taylor, my family's spread is east of here. Can Price really take our land this way?" Maggie asked, her young face creased with worry. "Not without a fight," Hattie declared. "Cole, can you finish up here? I need to ride into town." "I'm coming with you," Cole said, his tone brooking no argument. "Ben, would you mind staying with Maggie?" Ben agreed, though he still looked uncertain about Cole. As they rode toward Independence, Hattie explained the history between her family and Price. "My father refused to sell to him, no matter how much pressure Price applied. After Pa died, Price thought I'd be an easy mark, a woman alone, desperate for cash." Her laugh was bitter. "He underestimated how stubborn Daniels women can be." "Stubbornness is an admirable quality," Cole remarked, "when it's in service of something worth fighting for." The land office was crowded when they arrived. A cluster of men gathered around a map spread on a large table. Price stood at the center, pointing at something while a well-dressed stranger, presumably the lawyer from Cheyenne, nodded. Hattie pushed her way through, Cole close behind her. "Mr. Price, I understand you're making claims on land that belongs to the Circle D." Price turned, feigning surprise. "Miss Daniels, how kind of you to join us. Mr. Harrington here was just explaining a discrepancy in the original survey of your property." The lawyer adjusted his spectacles. "According to these documents, the northern boundary of the Daniels homestead should run along the ridge, not the creek as has been generally accepted. This would place the spring in question on Rocking P land." "That's nonsense," Hattie said firmly. "My father's deed clearly states that Cottonwood Creek forms the boundary. I have the papers to prove it." "Documents can be misinterpreted," Harrington said with practiced sympathy. "Or altered." The implication hung in the air like gunsmoke. Cole stepped forward, his voice quiet but carrying. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Harrington." "Merely an observation of possibilities," the lawyer replied smoothly. "I have the original deed at home," Hattie said, "with the territorial seal. Would you like to accuse the land office of fraud as well?" A murmur ran through the gathered men. The land office clerk, a nervous man named Simmons, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should examine all the relevant documents before proceeding further." "An excellent suggestion," Price agreed, his smile tight. "Shall we reconvene tomorrow, say noon?" "That will give Miss Daniels time to locate her papers." As the gathering dispersed, Price approached Hattie and Cole. "You're fighting a losing battle, Miss Daniels. Even if you manage to hold onto your land today, how long before the next crisis? A woman can't run a ranch alone." "She's not alone," Cole said quietly. Price assessed him with new interest. "No, and what's your stake in this, Adams? You're new to these parts." "My stake is my business," Cole replied evenly. "But I'm not new to dealing with men who take what isn't theirs." Price's eyes hardened. "Careful, stranger. Men who meddle in affairs that don't concern them often find themselves unwelcome in independence. Is that a threat, Mr. Price? Hattie asked. A friendly warning, nothing more. Price touched his hat brim. Until tomorrow, Miss Daniels. As they rode back to the ranch, Hattie's mind raced. The deed is in my father's strongbox. It clearly shows the creek as our boundary. Price wouldn't make this move unless he thought he could win, Cole observed. He's got something up his sleeve. Or someone in his pocket, Hattie agreed grimly. Simmons always was a weak man. They found Ben and Maggie in the kitchen, where Maggie had prepared a simple meal of beans and cornbread. As they ate, Hattie explained the situation. That skunk, Ben said angrily. My pa always said Price would steal the pennies off a dead man's eyes. We need to find that deed, Hattie said, pushing away from the table. It's our only chance. The strongbox was hidden beneath a loose floorboard in their father's bedroom, a solid iron affair with a heavy padlock. Hattie retrieved the key from its hiding place and opened it, spreading the contents on the bed: land deeds, cattle bills of sale, their parents' marriage certificate, and a handful of letters tied with faded ribbon. But the homestead deed, the original document with the territorial seal that established their boundaries, was missing. It should be here, Hattie said, panic rising in her voice as she searched through the papers again. It was always here. Cole examined the box carefully. No signs of forced entry. Whoever took it had the key or knew how to pick a lock without leaving marks. But who would? Hattie stopped, a memory surfacing. The day after Pa's funeral, I found Simmons in the house. He said he was paying his respects, but I'd already been gone all morning at the cemetery. He could have been searching for the deed then. And now he works with Price, Cole concluded. That's not coincidence. What do we do? Maggie asked, her voice small. Without the deed, won't we lose the spring? Hattie sat heavily on the bed, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. I don't know, Maggie. Without that water, the ranch isn't viable, especially in a drought year. Maybe we should consider Price's offer, Ben suggested hesitantly. Before he takes it all anyway. No, Cole said, still studying the strongbox. There's always another way. Hattie looked up, catching something in his tone. You have an idea, maybe, Cole admitted, but it's not without risk. How well do you know the territorial judge, Judge Wilson? He's fair from what I've heard. Not a man easily bought. Good, we'll need that. Cole turned to Ben. Can you get word to the neighboring ranchers? The ones who aren't in Price's pocket. We might need witnesses tomorrow. Ben nodded, clearly relieved to have a task. I'll ride out tonight. After Ben and Maggie had left the room, Hattie faced Cole. What are you planning? A bluff of sorts, Cole admitted. But I need to know something first. Do you trust me, Hattie? The question caught her off guard. Did she trust this man who'd appeared out of nowhere, who'd known her father years ago, who'd invested his savings in their failing ranch? She studied his face in the fading light, the steady gaze that met hers without flinching. Yes, she realized with surprise. I think I do. His smile was brief but genuine. Good, because tomorrow's going to be interesting. They spent the evening preparing, reviewing old maps and letters, anything that might support their claim. Cole rode out briefly and returned with a package wrapped in oilskin, which he refused to explain, saying only that it was insurance. The next morning dawned clear and hot, promising another scorching day. Hattie dressed carefully in her best skirt and blouse, her hair neatly pinned beneath her hat. Cole, too, had made an effort, wearing a clean shirt and vest, his usual trail clothes exchanged for something more befitting a business meeting. Maggie begged to come, but Hattie insisted she stay behind. I need you to look after things here, she told her sister. This could get ugly. You'll be careful, Maggie asked, hugging Hattie tightly. As careful as a Daniels ever is, Hattie promised. The land office was even more crowded than the previous day, with not only Price and his men but several neighboring ranchers whom Ben had summoned. Judge Wilson had also arrived from the county seat, his presence lending gravity to the proceedings. "Quite the gathering for a simple boundary dispute," the judge observed dryly. "Hardly simple, Your Honor," Price's lawyer said smoothly. "We have evidence that the original survey was flawed, placing a valuable water source on the wrong property." "So I've been informed," Wilson replied, unimpressed. "I understand the original deed is missing. Convenient, isn't it?" Price suggested with a thin smile. Hattie stepped forward, her chin high. "My father's deed clearly stated that Cottonwood Creek formed our northern boundary." "That deed has been stolen." "A serious accusation," Harrington countered. "Perhaps it was simply misplaced. In any case, we have brought a surveyor who can demonstrate the discrepancy." The surveyor, a nervous man with ink-stained fingers, unrolled a map and began pointing out landmarks. As he spoke, Cole moved to stand beside Hattie, the package from the night before tucked under his arm. "Your Honor," Cole interrupted, his voice calm but carrying. "Before we proceed with new surveys, I'd like to submit evidence that may settle this matter quickly." All eyes turned to him. Price frowned, clearly not having anticipated this development. "And you are?" the judge asked. "Cole Adams, Your Honor. I'm Miss Daniels's business partner and representative in this matter." "Very well, Mr. Adams. What evidence do you have?" Cole unwrapped the package, revealing a leather-bound book. "This is the journal of Thomas Reynolds, the original surveyor for this territory from 1856 to 1861. In it, he details every boundary he established, including those of the Daniels homestead." A murmur ran through the crowd. Price and Harrington exchanged alarmed glances. "Where did you get this?" Harrington demanded. "From the Territorial Archives in Cheyenne," Cole replied. "Public record available to anyone who takes the time to look. Reynolds was very precise in his work. He notes here that he used Cottonwood Creek as the natural boundary for the northern edge of the Daniels claim, as was common practice with waterways." Judge Wilson accepted the journal, examining the neat handwriting with interest. "This appears authentic." "Mr. Harrington, did your research include consulting these records?" The lawyer tugged at his collar. "We focused on more recent surveys, Your Honor." "Convenient oversight," Cole observed mildly, but Price wasn't finished. He stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "A dusty old journal doesn't override proper modern surveying techniques. The boundaries need to be redrawn according to scientific principles." "Actually," Ben Taylor spoke up from the crowd, "my father and I helped Joshua Daniels maintain that boundary line for 15 years. There's never been any question about where it lies until now, when the waters become so valuable." Other ranchers murmured agreement. Judge Wilson held up a hand for silence. "Mr. Price, your interest in this matter seems to have developed rather suddenly, and with suspicious timing considering Miss Daniels's recent difficulties. Furthermore, the disappearance of the original deed raises serious concerns about the integrity of this proceeding." He closed the journal with finality. "I find no compelling reason to redraw boundaries that have been recognized for over a decade. The Cottonwood Creek will remain the northern boundary of the Circle D Ranch." The relief that flooded through Hattie was so intense she felt light-headed. Cole's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. Price was livid. "This isn't over," he hissed as he passed them on his way out. "Not by a long shot." Outside, the gathered ranchers congratulated Hattie, many expressing admiration for her stand against Price. When they had dispersed, she turned to Cole. "That journal, how did you know about it?" "I didn't," he admitted with a small smile, but I suspected something like it would exist. Surveyors keep records, and Reynolds was known for his thoroughness. You took an awful chance. Sometimes that's all you can do. He offered her his arm. Shall we go home? The word home caught her attention, not the ranch or your place, but home, as if it belonged to both of them. The thought was both unsettling and strangely comforting. The victory at the land office bought them time, but the challenges of running the ranch remained daunting. The drought continued, making every drop of water precious. Cole developed a system to irrigate the most crucial pastures, using the spring that Price had coveted. Slowly, the cattle began to improve, gaining weight on the better grazing. Cole rode into town and returned with 3 young cowboys looking for work, willing to accept partial payment in food and lodging until the ranch turned a profit again. Hattie found herself working alongside Cole from dawn to dusk, repairing, rebuilding, planning. They developed a rhythm together, each anticipating the other's needs, finishing each other's sentences. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, discussing the day's work and planning for tomorrow, while Maggie played the battered piano inside. One evening, as they watched a spectacular sunset paint the western sky, Cole asked, "Do you ever regret taking me on as a partner?" Hattie considered the question. "No," she answered honestly. "The ranch would be lost without you." "It's not lost because of you, Hattie." His voice was soft in the gathering dusk. "Your determination, your refusal to give up, that's what saved this place." She shook her head, embarrassed by the praise. "We're not saved yet. Price is still out there waiting for us to fail." "Let him wait," Cole said confidently. "We're getting stronger every day." As if to test that strength, a rider appeared the next morning with news that made Hattie's blood run cold. Thornton Price had filed for water rights on the upper reaches of Cottonwood Creek, where it crossed public land before entering the Circle D. "If he dams the creek above our property, we'll be left with nothing during the dry months," Hattie realized, pacing the kitchen while Cole and Ben considered options. "Can he do that legally?" Ben asked. "It's a gray area," Cole admitted. "Water law is complicated. But if he controls the flow before it reaches your property, he could strangle the ranch without technically violating your boundaries." "It's just another way to force us to sell," Hattie said bitterly. "He knows we can't survive without that water." Cole was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "There might be another approach. The railroad survey team passed through last month. They're planning a spur line to connect Independence to the main Union Pacific route." Ben sat up straighter. "I heard rumors about that." "Would make shipping cattle a lot easier. And more profitable," Cole added. "The proposed route passes just east of the Circle D. If we could convince them to adjust their plans slightly to cross our land instead." Hattie caught his meaning immediately. "We could offer right-of-way in exchange for a loading station on our property." "Exactly," Cole said, his eyes lighting up. "With direct rail access, we'd have an advantage over Price. Even with reduced water, we could shift our operation, focus more on being a shipping point for other ranchers." "Price would hate that," Ben said with undisguised glee. "He's been talking about how the railroad will make him the cattle king of Wyoming." "We'd need to move fast," Hattie cautioned. "The survey team won't be in the area much longer." "I'll ride to their camp today," Cole offered. "Ben, can you spread the word to the other small ranchers? If they support our proposal, it strengthens our position." As the men rode out, Hattie felt a surge of hope. For the first time since her father's death, she was doing more than just holding on. She was building something new. Cole returned late that night, tired but satisfied. "They're interested," he reported. "The chief engineer admits our route would be more practical than their current plan. They're sending someone to inspect the land tomorrow." The railroad's representative, a brisk Easterner named Elliot, arrived promptly at 10 the next morning. He spent hours examining the proposed route, taking measurements and making notes in a leather-bound book. "The grade is favorable," he told them as they stood on a rise overlooking the ranch. "And your offer of free right-of-way is generous. I'll recommend this adjustment to my superiors." "How soon would construction begin?" Hattie asked. "Spring, most likely," Elliot replied. "These things move at their own pace." After Elliot departed, Cole and Hattie walked back to the house together, cautiously optimistic about their prospects. "Even if Price gets his water rights, we'll have an alternative," Cole said. "The railroad changes everything." "If it comes," Hattie cautioned, "we can't count on it yet." Their prudent skepticism proved warranted. 3 days later, Elliot returned with disappointing news. The railroad had decided to stick with their original route, a decision influenced, he reluctantly admitted, by a substantial land grant from Thornton Price. "I'm sorry," Elliot said, genuinely apologetic. "The economics were compelling. Mr. Price offered not only free passage through his land but also funding for the station construction." After he left, Hattie sat heavily on the porch steps, the weight of defeat pressing down on her. "He outmaneuvered us again." Cole paced the yard, his frustration evident in every line of his body. "He must have heard about our proposal. Price has spies everywhere." "What now?" Maggie asked, her young face pinched with worry. Cole stopped pacing, his expression hardening with resolve. "Now we fight fire with fire." The next morning, Cole rode out alone before dawn, returning well after dark. This pattern continued for days, with Cole refusing to explain his absences except to say he was exploring options. Hattie worried but trusted him enough to wait for an explanation. It came a week later when Cole arrived with a stranger, a weathered man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and a quiet competence about him. "Hattie, this is Samuel Garrett," Cole introduced him. "He's a geologist from Denver." Garrett tipped his hat. "Miss Daniels, your partner here has been most persistent." "A geologist," Hattie repeated, puzzled. "I don't understand." Cole's eyes held a spark of excitement. "Remember your father's stories about the strange rocks on the North Ridge, the ones that smelled like rotten eggs when broken?" Hattie nodded slowly. "He used to joke that the devil was living under our land." "Not the devil," Garrett said with a small smile. "Sulfur. And where there's sulfur in these formations, there's often something more valuable nearby." Cole explained. "High-grade coal if Mr. Garrett's preliminary findings are correct." The implications hit Hattie like a physical blow. "Coal on our land, are you certain?" "Not without proper testing," Garrett cautioned, "but the surface indicators are promising." "With your permission, I'd like to conduct a more thorough survey." Hope, that dangerous emotion Hattie had been trying to suppress, flared again. "Of course, whatever you need." The next few days were a flurry of activity as Garrett examined rock formations, collected samples, and dug test pits across the northern section of the ranch. Cole worked alongside him, learning the basics of geological surveying with characteristic intensity. Hattie divided her time between helping with the survey and maintaining ranch operations, her mind racing with possibilities. If they truly had coal on their land, it would change everything. The railroad would have no choice but to consider their route, regardless of Price's influence. On the fourth day, Garrett confirmed their hopes. "There's definitely a coal seam running through the North Ridge," he told them, spreading out his hand-drawn maps on the kitchen table. "Not the largest I've seen, but good quality and relatively accessible." "What would it take to develop it?" Hattie asked. "Capital primarily," Garrett replied. "Mining requires investment, equipment, labor, transportation. But with the railroad planning to come through the area, the timing couldn't be better. Coal powers those engines, and having a local source would be extremely valuable. Cole studied the maps intently. Would investors be interested in something this size? I have contacts in Denver who might be, Garrett said. Smaller operations can be quite profitable if managed well. With your permission, I'll take my findings to them. After Garrett departed for Denver, promising to return within 2 weeks, Cole and Hattie celebrated their potential good fortune with a rare indulgence, a bottle of decent whiskey Cole had purchased in town. Sitting on the porch in the soft summer evening, they allowed themselves to imagine a future where the ranch wasn't just surviving but thriving. We could rebuild the main house, Hattie mused, the whiskey warming her veins. Add on that second-story Pa always talked about. Expand the herd, Cole added. Maybe try some of those Hereford cattle that are becoming popular back east. Maggie could go to that school in Denver she's been reading about. They fell silent, each lost in their own vision of what might be. The weight of constant struggle had lifted, if only temporarily, allowing them to breathe freely for the first time in months. "Thank you," Hattie said softly, "for not giving up on us." Cole's eyes, reflecting the last golden light of day, met hers. There was never any question of that. Something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible barrier dissolving. Hattie felt it like a physical change in the air, a new awareness of Cole not just as a partner, but as a man, one whose presence had become essential to her in ways that went far beyond business. The sound of approaching riders shattered the moment. 3 men on horseback were coming up the road, moving fast in the gathering dusk. Cole was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the revolver at his hip. "Get inside," he told Hattie, "and bring the shotgun." But as the riders drew closer, Hattie recognized the lead horse. "It's Ben," she said with relief, which quickly turned to alarm as she noted the urgency in their approach. Ben reined in hard, his horse lathered with sweat. The 2 men with him were ranch hands from neighboring spreads, their expressions grim. "Price knows about the coal," Ben blurted without preamble. "Someone talked. He's filing mining claims on public land all around your northern boundary." "He can't touch our property," Hattie said. "No, but he can box you in," one of the other men explained. "Control access, make it impossible to develop your seam without going through his land." Cole's expression darkened. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Ben replied. "His men are riding to the county seat tonight with the paperwork. If they file first thing in the morning, those claims are his. Then we need to file our own claims," Cole said decisively. "Tonight." "The land office in Independence is closed," Hattie pointed out. "Not the county office," Ben said. "It's 30 miles, but if we ride hard, we could make it by morning." Cole was already moving toward the barn. "I'll go. Hattie, you stay here in case Price tries something directly against the ranch." "No," Hattie countered, following him. "I'm coming with you. My signature needs to be on those papers. Maggie will be safe with Ben and the hands." Cole looked like he wanted to argue but recognized the determination in her eyes. "All right, but we leave in 10 minutes. Pack light and dress warm, it'll be cold riding through the night." They set out as the first stars appeared, pushing their horses as hard as they dared on the rough country roads. The moon rose, casting silver light across the landscape, turning familiar terrain into something ethereal and strange. They rode in silence for the most part, conserving energy and focus for the grueling journey. Occasionally, Cole would check on Hattie, offering water from his canteen, or suggesting a brief rest for the horses, but she always pushed on, her jaw set with determination. Around midnight, they paused at a stream to water the horses and stretch their aching muscles. "You ride well," Cole observed, watching as Hattie massaged her lower back. "Pa made sure of that," she replied, accepting the jerky he offered. Said a rancher who can't stay in the saddle all day isn't much of a rancher. He'd be proud of you, Hattie. Not many would fight this hard, she chewed thoughtfully. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being stubborn beyond sense. Maybe Price is right, a woman alone can't run a ranch in Wyoming. You're not alone, Cole reminded her. And from what I've seen, you could run circles around most men trying to ranch in these parts. The simple faith in his words warmed her more than any campfire could have. They remounted and continued their journey, the miles slowly falling away beneath their horses' hooves. Dawn was breaking as they crested the final hill overlooking the county seat, a town somewhat larger than Independence, but still modest by Eastern standards. They urged their tired horses down the main street, drawing curious glances from early risers. The county land office was just opening when they arrived, the clerk yawning as he unlocked the door. His surprise at seeing them quickly turned to interest as Cole explained their purpose, producing the maps Garrett had prepared showing the extent of their coal deposit and the surrounding land they wished to claim. "You're just in time," the clerk said as he stamped their paperwork. Had another party file similar claims not 20 minutes ago, some men working for Thornton Price. Hattie's heart sank. "They beat us here." "For some parcels, yes," the clerk confirmed, checking his records, "but your claims overlap with theirs in several sections. That'll need to be sorted out through proper channels. We have proof of our coal deposit on our existing property," Cole pointed out. "That should give us priority for adjacent claims, shouldn't it?" The clerk hesitated. "That's for the judge to decide. But I'd say you've got a strong case, especially since your ranch predates Price's interest in the area." Outside the land office, they found Price himself waiting, his face thunderous with anger. "You two are becoming a genuine nuisance," he said without preamble. "First the water rights, now this. I've been patient, Miss Daniels, out of respect for your father, but my patience is at an end." "We're simply protecting what's ours," Hattie replied evenly. "Something you seem to have difficulty respecting." Price's gaze shifted to Cole. "And you, Adams. You're not from around here. No ties, no history. What's your stake in this fight? Or is it just the woman you're after?" Cole's expression remained impassive, but Hattie saw his hand twitch near his revolver. "My reasons are my own, Price. But I'll tell you this much, I don't like bullies who think money entitles them to whatever they want." Price smiled coldly. "Money may not entitle me, but it does allow me to buy what I want eventually, including judges if necessary." He tipped his hat with mock courtesy. "Enjoy your temporary victory, Miss Daniels. It won't last." As Price strode away, Hattie released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's dangerous." "Yes," Cole agreed, "and getting more so. We need to be careful." They found rooms at the local hotel, both too exhausted for the return journey without rest. After washing away the trail dust and changing into clean clothes from their saddlebags, they met in the hotel dining room for a late breakfast. "What happens now?" Hattie asked as she sipped gratefully at a cup of hot coffee. "We wait for Garrett to return with word from his investors," Cole replied, "and we prepare for Price to escalate. He won't take this lying down." "You think he'll try something against the ranch directly?" Cole considered this. "Maybe not immediately. He's too smart for outright violence, it would turn local opinion against him, but he'll look for leverage, any weakness he can exploit." His prediction proved accurate. When they returned to the Circle D the next day, they found that Price had convinced the bank in Independence to call in a loan on their cattle, demanding immediate payment or surrender of the collateral. He must have pressured Pearson. Hattie fumed as they read the bank's letter. Pa had an understanding about these seasonal loans. They've never been called in early before. How much? Cole asked grimly. $300, due in 2 weeks. Cole calculated silently. We could sell some of the cattle, but at current prices, we'd lose too much of the herd. And without the herd, we have no income until the coal operation starts, Hattie concluded. If it starts. They were saved from this immediate crisis by the return of Samuel Garrett, accompanied by a distinguished gentleman in an expensive Eastern suit, who introduced himself as James Whitfield of the Colorado Mining Consortium. Mr. Garrett's report was most intriguing, Whitfield told them as they sat in the ranch house parlor. Our company specializes in developing smaller coal operations like yours. We believe there's significant potential here. Hope surged again in Hattie's chest. You're interested in investing? More than interested, Whitfield confirmed. We're prepared to offer you a partnership. The consortium would provide capital for equipment, labor, and transportation infrastructure. You would retain ownership of the land and receive a percentage of the profits once operations begin. What percentage? Cole asked, always practical. 20% initially, rising to 30% once our investment is recouped, Whitfield replied, plus a one-time cash payment of $5,000 for the mining rights. The figure stunned Hattie into momentary silence. $5,000 was more money than the ranch had ever seen, even in its best years. We'd need some of that payment up front, Cole said, his expression giving nothing away. And guarantees about land reclamation once mining is complete. Whitfield nodded approvingly. You've done this before, Mr. Adams. Let's just say I've learned to read the fine print, Cole replied. They spent the rest of the day negotiating terms, with Garrett occasionally offering technical explanations. By evening, they had reached an agreement. The consortium would pay $1,000 immediately, with the remainder to follow when full operations began in the spring. The Circle D would retain all ranching rights to the surface land, with mining limited to the North Ridge area. After the visitors departed to their hotel in town, Cole and Hattie sat at the kitchen table, the signed contract between them. We did it, Hattie said, still dazed by the sudden turn in their fortunes. The ranch is saved. And more than saved, Cole added. With this money you can expand, improve, build the ranch your father dreamed of. Hattie noted his choice of words. You said you, not we. Cole was silent for a moment, his eyes on the contract. The agreement is with you, Hattie. The Circle D is your legacy. Our partnership was always meant to help you get back on your feet, he finished quietly. I've done that now. A cold fear gripped Hattie's heart. You're leaving. He didn't deny it. I came here looking for work, not permanence. Drifters like me don't usually stay in one place too long. Is that what you want? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. To move on, the question hung between them, weighted with all the unspoken feelings that had grown over their months together. Cole looked up, meeting her gaze directly. What I want and what's best aren't always the same thing, Hattie. Before she could respond, Maggie burst into the kitchen, her face alight with excitement at the news Ben had brought from town. The moment passed, the conversation unfinished. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The bank loan was paid off with part of the advance from the consortium. Engineers arrived to begin planning the mine opening. Surveying equipment was delivered, and hiring began for the initial work crew. Through it all, Cole remained fully engaged, overseeing the ranch operations while Hattie dealt with the mining development. If anyone noticed the slight distance that had grown between them, no one mentioned it. Thornton Price, predictably, was not idle during this time. Having failed to block their mining claims directly, he began purchasing land around Independence, including businesses that the Circle D relied on for supplies and services. The pressure mounted subtly at first. Prices at the general store increased for Hattie and her hands. The blacksmith suddenly became too busy to shoe their horses, and the local cattle broker lowered his offering prices for Circle D stock. "He's trying to squeeze us slowly," Hattie observed one evening as she and Cole reviewed their dwindling options for purchasing winter supplies. "Standard tactics," Cole agreed. "Isolate your opponent, cut off their resources, wait for surrender." "I won't give him the satisfaction." Cole smiled slightly. "I never thought you would, but we need a new approach." The solution came from an unexpected source. Ben Taylor arrived the following day with news that several of the smaller ranchers in the area, all feeling Price's pressure in various ways, were discussing forming a cooperative. "Safety in numbers," Ben explained. "We'd pool resources, buy supplies in bulk from Cheyenne instead of independents, maybe even coordinate cattle drives to get better prices at the railhead." "That could work," Cole said thoughtfully. "Price can control one small town, but not the entire territory. And with the consortium's backing, the Circle D could serve as a hub for the cooperative." The idea gained momentum quickly. Within days, representatives from 6 neighboring ranches gathered at the Circle D to formalize the Independence Ranchers Cooperative. Together, they had enough capital to bypass Price's stranglehold on local commerce. Price's response was swift and violent. 2 nights after the cooperative meeting, the Circle D's main barn burst into flames, the fire spreading rapidly in the dry autumn air. Cole organized a bucket brigade from the creek, working desperately to prevent the fire from reaching the house or the smaller outbuildings. Hattie fought alongside him, her lungs burning from smoke, her arms aching from the weight of water buckets. By dawn, the barn was a smoldering ruin, but they had saved the rest of the ranch. As the sun rose, revealing the full extent of the destruction, Hattie surveyed the scene with grim determination. "We'll rebuild," she declared, her voice hoarse from smoke. "Bigger and stronger." Cole, his face blackened with soot, nodded in agreement. "And this time with more eyes watching. Price has overplayed his hand. Even his supporters in town will balk at arson." He was right. The fire marked a turning point in local opinion. When news spread that the same night had seen suspicious fires at 2 other cooperative members' ranches, many in Independence began to question Price's influence. The editor of the small local newspaper, previously cautious about criticizing the powerful rancher, published an editorial condemning the cowardly attacks on hardworking families. The cooperative responded by accelerating their plans, ordering supplies from Cheyenne, and arranging for armed guards to protect shipments. The Circle D, with its new wealth from the mining agreement, took the lead in organizing these efforts. Construction on the new barn began immediately, with neighbors and cooperative members providing labor. The structure rose quickly, larger than before, with improved features for winter cattle management and hay storage. As they worked side by side placing roof beams, Cole finally broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. "You haven't said anything about my leaving," he observed, hammering a nail with perhaps more force than necessary. Hattie measured a board before answering. "I figured you'd go when you were ready. It's not my place to hold you." "Isn't it?" The question was quiet but loaded with meaning. She put down her saw, facing him directly. "What do you want me to say, Cole? That the ranch needs you, it does." She stopped, the words sticking in her throat. "That you what?" he pressed gently. Before she could answer, a shout from below interrupted them. Ben was calling up, his expression urgent. "Riders coming. Looks like Price and his men." Cole and Hattie climbed down quickly from the barn frame. Cole grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against a post, checking that it was loaded. "Get inside," he told Hattie. "This could turn ugly." "No," she replied firmly, picking up her own shotgun. "This is my fight too." Price arrived with 6 men, all armed, their horses kicking up dust as they entered the ranch yard. The cooperative members working on the barn gathered behind Cole and Hattie, creating a united front. "Quite the welcome committee," Price observed, reining in his horse. His gaze took in the half-built barn. "Rebuilding already? You people are persistent, I'll give you that." "What do you want, Price?" Hattie demanded. "Just a neighborly visit," Price replied with mock innocence. "And to deliver some news. The railroad has finalized their route. The spur line will pass 5 miles east of here through my property. The loading station will be built on the Rocking P." The news was a blow, but not unexpected. Hattie kept her expression neutral. "Congratulations. Was that worth riding all this way to tell us?" "Oh, there's more," Price continued, clearly enjoying himself. "The county commissioner has reviewed your mining claims. There seems to be some question about their validity, given the overlapping filings. A hearing has been scheduled for next month." Cole stepped forward. "Your influence with the commissioner won't matter if the territorial judge reviews the case. Our claims were properly filed and supported by documented evidence of the coal deposit." "Perhaps," Price conceded, "but legal proceedings can be so time-consuming and expensive. Meanwhile, winter's coming and I notice your new barn isn't finished yet." He gazed meaningfully at the framework. "Shame if something were to happen to it again." "That's enough, Price," one of the cooperative ranchers called out. "We all know you were behind the fires. Try anything like that again and you'll answer to all of us." Price's smile faded. "Be careful about making accusations without proof, Taylor. It could be unhealthy." "We have proof," Cole said calmly. "One of your men got careless, left a monogrammed flask near where the fire started. RP Rocking P. Judge Wilson might be interested in seeing it." Hattie glanced at Cole, knowing no such flask existed, admiring his bluff. Price's face darkened. "You're lying." "Am I?" Cole held his gaze steadily. "Why don't we let a jury decide?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Price's features. He looked around at the determined faces of the cooperative members, all armed and standing firm. "This isn't over," he said finally, turning his horse. "Not by a long shot." As they watched Price and his men ride away, Hattie turned to Cole. "There wasn't any flask, was there?" "No," he admitted. "But Price doesn't know that, and now he'll be wondering what other evidence we might have." Ben laughed, clapping Cole on the shoulder. "Remind me never to play poker with you, Adams." Work resumed on the barn, but the confrontation had left everyone on edge. That night, they posted guards around the ranch, taking turns watching for any sign of Price's return. Hattie took the midnight shift, sitting on the porch with a rifle across her knees and a cup of coffee to ward off the autumn chill. Cole joined her around 1 in the morning, silently offering a blanket which she gratefully accepted. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked as he settled beside her on the porch step. "Too much on my mind," he replied, gazing out at the silver-washed landscape. The moon was nearly full, illuminating the ranch in ghostly detail. "Price," Hattie guessed. "Partly." He hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. "Mostly about what happens next, with the ranch, with us." The word hung between them in the cool night air. Hattie pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, gathering courage. "There doesn't have to be an us, Cole. You've fulfilled your side of our bargain. The ranch is secure now, or will be once the mine is operational. You're free to go if that's what you want." "Is that what you want?" he asked, turning to face her. In the moonlight, his eyes were shadowed, unreadable. Hattie took a deep breath. "No." The simple words seemed to release something in Cole. His shoulders relaxed, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "I've been drifting most of my life, Hattie. Never stayed anywhere long enough to put down roots. But these past months, working alongside you, building something that matters, it's changed me." "Changed how?" she prompted when he fell silent. "Made me want things I thought weren't for men like me. A home, purpose." He paused, his gaze steady on hers. "Someone to share it all with." Hattie's heart quickened. "Are you saying you want to stay, if you'll have me, not just as a business partner?" She smiled then, reaching for his hand. "I think that can be arranged, Mr. Adams." His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and strong. "Good. Because I'm finding it hard to imagine being anywhere you're not, Miss Daniels." The moment was perfect in its simplicity, no grand declarations, just honest words spoken under a vast Wyoming sky. When Cole leaned in to kiss her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if they'd been moving toward this moment since the day he rode up to her door. Their fragile peace was short-lived. The next morning brought news that Price had filed legal injunctions against both their mining claims and the railroad's proposed route, citing environmental concerns, a transparent delay tactic, but one that would require time and money to overcome. "He's trying to run out the clock," Cole explained to the gathered cooperative members. "If he can delay the mine opening until spring, we'll miss our window with the consortium. They need coal production to begin before the summer rush. And without the mine income, we're vulnerable again," Hattie added. "So what do we do?" Ben asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Cole paced the room, thinking. "We need leverage, something Price wants badly enough to back down." "He wants the Circle D," one of the ranchers pointed out. "Always has." "No," Cole said firmly. "The land is never on the table." "What about a compromise on the railroad?" another suggested. "Offer to share the loading station rights." Hattie shook her head. "Price doesn't compromise. He takes everything or nothing." The discussion continued for hours, various strategies proposed and discarded, until Cole suddenly stopped pacing, a new idea forming. "The water," he said. "It all comes back to water. Price's entire empire depends on controlling the watershed. What if we could prove he's been illegally diverting water from public streams?" Ben leaned forward. "You think he has been?" "I'd bet my last dollar on it," Cole replied. "No ranch expands as quickly as the Rocking Pea has without bending some rules. We just need evidence." The plan they developed was risky, but potentially devastating to Price's operations. Two of the younger cooperative members would secretly survey the streams crossing Price's property, documenting any dams or diversions that violated territorial water laws. "If we can prove he's stealing water," Cole explained, "we can file for injunctive relief. The court could freeze all his operations pending a full investigation." "Fighting fire with fire," Hattie observed with grim satisfaction. The young men departed that night, equipped with maps and a camera borrowed from the newspaper editor, an increasingly vocal critic of Price's methods. They would have 3 days to complete their survey before being missed from their regular duties. While they waited, work continued on the barn, now nearly complete except for the doors and interior fittings. The mining engineers proceeded with their preliminary work, staying carefully within the boundaries of the Circle D to avoid legal complications from Price's injunctions. Hattie and Cole found moments amid the chaos to continue their tentative courtship, quiet conversations by lamplight, shared meals after long workdays, occasional touches that lingered longer than strictly necessary. Nothing was officially declared, but the shift in their relationship was clear to everyone at the ranch. Maggie, in particular, was delighted by the development. "I knew you'd fall in love with him," she told Hattie one evening as they prepared supper. "From the very first day, Maggie." Hattie scolded, her cheeks warming. "It's not we haven't, oh please," her sister interrupted with teenage exasperation. "I have eyes, Hattie, and it's about time you had someone who looks at you the way Cole does." The scouts returned on schedule, bringing with them exactly what they'd hoped to find: evidence of no fewer than 7 illegal water diversions on Price's property, carefully photographed and mapped. "Some dated back years," explained one of the young men who had worked briefly for the Rocking P before joining the cooperative. "Price has been siphoning water from public streams and the neighboring properties for at least 5 years," Cole confirmed as they examined the evidence. "This is more than enough for a judge to issue an order." They wasted no time taking their findings to Judge Wilson, who reviewed the documentation with growing concern. "These are serious violations," he acknowledged, setting down the last photograph. "If proven true, Mr. Price could face substantial penalties, possibly even criminal charges. All we're asking for now is a temporary restraining order," Cole explained, "preventing him from continuing these diversions while the court investigates." Wilson nodded thoughtfully. "That seems reasonable. I'll issue the order today. Mr. Price will be served by tomorrow morning." As they left the judge's chambers, Hattie couldn't contain a small, victorious smile. "For the first time, we've got him on the defensive. Don't underestimate him," Cole cautioned. "A cornered predator is the most dangerous kind." His warning proved prescient. Price's response to the restraining order was immediate and brutal. That night, 3 masked men attacked one of the cooperative scouts as he returned home from town, beating him severely and leaving him with a message: "Tell Adams and the Daniels woman to back off, or the next one won't live to deliver a message." The young man survived, but would spend weeks recovering from his injuries. The attack sent a wave of fear through the cooperative, with several of the smaller ranchers questioning whether the fight was worth the risk to their families. Cole and Hattie called an emergency meeting at the Circle D, now the de facto headquarters of their resistance against Price. "I understand your concerns," Cole told the assembled ranchers, many of whom were visibly shaken by the recent violence. "No one would blame you for stepping back. But consider what happens if we surrender now. Price doesn't just want the Circle D, he wants to control everything from here to the territorial border." "It's not just about our ranch anymore," Hattie added. "It's about whether one man gets to decide who prospers and who fails in this valley." Ben Taylor stood up, his jaw set determinedly. "The Daniels and Adams are right. If we back down now, Price wins everything. My family didn't build our ranch from nothing just to hand it over to a tyrant. I'm staying in the fight." One by one, the other ranchers voiced their agreement, their resolve strengthening as they spoke. By the end of the meeting, not only had the cooperative held together, but they had developed a plan for mutual protection. No one would travel alone, ranch houses would be guarded at night, and a system of signals was established to call for help if needed. The following week brought both setbacks and progress. Judge Wilson expanded the restraining order to include all of Price's water operations, effectively halting expansion of his ranch until the case could be heard. But Price's lawyers managed to delay the hearing on the mining claims, pushing it dangerously close to the consortium's deadline for beginning operations. Through it all, Hattie and Cole's partnership deepened, their shared challenges forging a bond stronger than either had expected. Late one evening, as they sat reviewing maps of the proposed mine site, Cole finally asked the question that had been on his mind. "If we win this fight when we win it," he corrected himself. "What then, Hattie? For us, I mean." She set down her pencil, meeting his gaze directly. What are you asking, Cole? He hesitated only briefly. I'm asking if you'd consider making our partnership permanent, in all ways. Hattie's heart seemed to pause before racing ahead. Are you proposing marriage, Mr. Adams? Inelegantly, perhaps, he admitted with a small smile. But yes, I am. We've known each other less than a year, she pointed out, though her tone held no rejection. I've known you long enough to be certain, Cole replied. I love you, Hattie Daniels. I think I have since that first night you stood on your porch with a shotgun, too proud to accept help but too smart to turn it away. Hattie laughed softly at the memory. You were so sure of yourself. I wasn't, he confessed. I was terrified you'd send me packing. But something told me this was where I belonged with you, building something that would last. She reached across the table, taking his hands in hers. Yes, she said simply. Yes, he repeated as if he couldn't quite believe it. Yes, I'll marry you, Cole Adams. Though God knows you're getting more than you bargained for a stubborn woman, a half-built ranch, and a powerful enemy. His smile was radiant. Sounds perfect to me. Their engagement remained private for the moment, a precious secret in the midst of their ongoing struggle with Price. The fight escalated when Price, increasingly desperate as legal proceedings threatened his empire, made a final ruthless play. 2 days after Cole and Hattie's private engagement, Thornton Price appeared at the Circle D, alone and unarmed, asking to speak with them. I'll save us all time and state my business plainly, he said as they sat in the newly finished parlor. I'm prepared to drop all legal challenges to your mining operation and railroad access in exchange for one thing. What's that? Cole asked warily. The water rights, Price replied. Permanent, exclusive rights to Cottonwood Creek from its source to where it leaves your property. Hattie frowned. That would leave the Circle D without reliable water. The ranch couldn't function. The ranch wouldn't need to, Price countered. With the mining income and railroad access, you could transition completely away from cattle or sell out and live comfortably elsewhere. This is our home, Hattie said firmly. We're not leaving. Price leaned forward, his expression hardening. Let me be clear. This is my final offer. Accept, and we all move forward. Refuse, and I will use every resource at my disposal to crush you both. Your choice. Cole and Hattie exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Cole nodded slightly, and Hattie turned back to Price. We have a counter-offer, she said. Drop your legal challenges, publicly dismantle all illegal water diversions, and agree to fair water-sharing agreements with all ranches in the valley. In return, we'll grant the Rocking P access to ship cattle through our railroad siding when it's built at reduced rates. Price's laugh was cold. You still don't understand your position. This isn't a negotiation, it's an ultimatum. Then we refuse, Cole said simply. We'll take our chances in court. Something dangerous flickered in Price's eyes. You won't live to see a courtroom, Adams. Is that a threat, Mr. Price? Hattie asked, her voice steady despite the chill that ran down her spine. A promise. Price stood, straightening his expensive coat. You have until tomorrow noon to reconsider. After that, whatever happens is on your heads. After he left, Cole double-checked that all the doors were locked and posted guards around the property. He's desperate, he told Hattie as they prepared for bed. That makes him unpredictable. What do you think he'll do? She asked, braiding her hair for the night. Nothing subtle, Cole replied grimly. Be ready for anything. They slept fitfully, both aware of the danger hanging over them. Morning brought no relief, only the knowledge that Price's deadline was approaching. Around 10, Ben rode in with disturbing news. Price's men were gathering in town, heavily armed and drinking despite the early hour. There's talk of coming out here, Ben reported nervously. A dozen men at least, maybe more by noon. Cole's expression was grim but resolute. "Get word to the cooperative. We need every man who can handle a rifle." He turned to Hattie. "You and Maggie should ride to the Taylor place. It'll be safer there." "I'm not leaving," Hattie said firmly. "This is my ranch, my fight." "Hattie, no, Cole, we face this together." Their argument was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, many horses. Cole moved to the window, his hand going instinctively to his revolver. "They're early," he said quietly. "At least 15 riders." Hattie joined him at the window. Price led the group, his face set in harsh lines even at this distance. Behind him rode his ranch hands and several men Hattie didn't recognize, hired guns, most likely. "We're outnumbered," she observed, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Not for long," Cole assured her. "The cooperative will come, if they get here in time." Cole turned to her then, his eyes intense. "Whatever happens, Hattie, know that loving you has been the best thing in my life." She touched his face gently. "We're not saying goodbyes yet, Cole Adams. We have a wedding to plan, remember." His smile was brief but genuine. "Yes, madam." They moved to the porch, watching as Price and his men formed a line across the front of the property. Price urged his horse forward, stopping about 20 yards from the house. "Time's up," he called. "What's your answer?" "The same as yesterday," Cole replied evenly. "We're not surrendering our water rights." Price shook his head in mock regret. "That's unfortunate for you." He turned to his men. "Burn it all. The house, the barn, everything. If anyone tries to stop you, shoot them." The men began to spread out, some dismounting with torches ready to light. Hattie raised her shotgun, aiming at the nearest rider. "This is private property, Price," she called out. "You and your men need to leave, now." Price laughed. "Or what, Miss Daniels, you'll shoot us all." "Not all," came a new voice from behind Price's line, "but enough to make it interesting." Price turned, startled, to find Ben Taylor and at least 20 cooperative members emerging from the trees that bordered the property. They had approached silently from the rear, using the cover of the woods, and now formed their own line, rifles ready. "This doesn't concern you, Taylor," Price snapped. "It concerns all of us," Ben replied. "You threaten one, you threaten all." For a long moment, no one moved. The tableau held Price, and his men caught between the determined defenders on the porch and the cooperative members at their backs. The potential for bloodshed hung in the air like gunpowder waiting for a spark. It was Price who finally broke the standoff, his calculating mind assessing the odds and finding them no longer in his favor. "This isn't over," he said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "You haven't heard the last from me." "Actually, Mr. Price, I believe we have." All heads turned to see Judge Wilson riding up, accompanied by the territorial marshal and several deputies. The judge looked grim as he surveyed the armed confrontation. "Marshal Davis has a warrant for your arrest," Wilson informed Price. "On charges of assault, attempted arson, water theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. The young man your thugs beat nearly to death has provided a full statement, including your direct orders." Price's face drained of color. "You can't prove anything." "We have sworn testimonies from 3 of your former employees," the marshal replied, moving forward with handcuffs visible. "Men who weren't willing to hang for your crimes. They've been quite informative." What followed was almost anticlimactic. Price, seeing his empire crumbling, surrendered without further resistance. His hired guns, facing no loyalty to a losing cause, dispersed quickly, leaving only his regular hands who were themselves eager to distance themselves from their employer's crimes. As Price was led away in handcuffs, he paused beside Cole and Hattie. "You think you've won," he said, his voice low and venomous, "but this land will break you eventually. It breaks everyone." Cole's arm went around Hattie's waist, steady and sure. Not everyone, Price. Just men like you who try to own more than their share. The aftermath of Price's arrest transformed the valley. With their main adversary removed, the legal challenges to the Circle D Tickets mining claims and railroad access were quickly resolved. The consortium proceeded with their development plans, and by spring, the first coal shipments were leaving the newly opened mine. The railroad, seeing the potential of the coal operation, adjusted their route to include a spur directly to the Circle D. Construction began on a loading station that would serve both the mine and the local ranchers, with the cooperative negotiating favorable shipping rates for all members. Through the winter, Cole and Hattie worked side by side to rebuild what Price's vendetta had damaged. The ranch flourished under their combined vision. Cole's practical knowledge of cattle operations, complementing Hattie's deep understanding of the land. They were married on a perfect June day in 1874, with Maggie as maid of honor and Ben as best man. The ceremony was held on the hillside overlooking the ranch, where wildflowers carpeted the ground and the distant mountains provided a majestic backdrop. "I never thought I'd find this," Cole told Hattie as they danced under the stars at their wedding celebration. "A home, a purpose. Someone to love who loves me back just as fiercely." "I never thought anyone would want us," Hattie admitted, remembering the despair she'd felt that first day when he'd ridden up to their failing ranch. A stubborn woman and her sister, with nothing but debt and determination. Cole smiled, pulling her closer. "Then nobody's got good taste but me," he whispered against her hair. Their happiness proved contagious. Maggie blossomed into a confident young woman, eventually pursuing her dream of attending school in Denver while returning to the ranch during holidays and summers. Ben Taylor, who had fought beside them through the darkest days, became a frequent visitor, his admiration for Maggie growing as she matured. The Circle D expanded over the years, incorporating some of Price's former holdings which were sold off after his conviction. The coal mine provided steady income that allowed them to weather the inevitable cycles of drought and harsh winters that challenged all Wyoming ranchers. Their first child, a son they named Joshua after Hattie's father, arrived in the spring of 1875, followed 2 years later by a daughter, Sarah. As the children grew, so did the legacy. Cole and Hattie were building not just a successful ranch, but a community bound together by shared struggle and mutual support. The cooperative that had formed during their fight against Price became a permanent institution, helping smaller ranchers survive in a changing world where large operations increasingly dominated the cattle business. On the 10th anniversary of Cole's arrival at the Circle D, they stood together on the porch where they had first met, watching their children play in the yard while the ranch hands brought in cattle from the summer range. "You ever regret staying?" Hattie asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Giving up the drifter's life?" Cole laughed softly. "Not for a single moment. Everything I was looking for without knowing it was right here." He kissed her temple gently. "Besides, I didn't give up wandering. I just found something worth coming home to." The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Below them, the ranch buildings stood solid and well-maintained, the corrals filled with healthy cattle, the fields green despite the season's dryness. In the distance, smoke rose from the mine operations, a reminder of the diversity that had saved them in their time of need. "We built something good here, didn't we?" Hattie mused, watching their son chase his sister around the oak tree they had planted on their wedding day. "Something better than good," Cole agreed. "Something that will last." And it did last, through all the challenges and changes that the closing years of the frontier would bring. The Circle D remained a cornerstone of the community, And the love story that had begun with a desperate woman and a drifting cowboy became the stuff of local legend, proof that even in the harshest landscapes, something beautiful could grow if given enough courage, determination, and heart.